All right, it's going public time. I'm Martin Falls, and joining us, the parish president of Terrebonne Parish, Mr. Gordon Dove. Mr. Dove, good to see you.
Thanks for having me, Martin.
All right, let's talk about the Atchafalaya River long distance sediment pipeline. We've heard of Atchafalaya River in our future equation for quite a long time. What's it all about?
Well, Martin, okay, let me start with this. You know, for the last 15, 17 years, we've built Morganza to the Gulf, 13 floodgates. We're lifting Morganza now to 15 feet. When I say we, Terrebonne Parish, the levee board, and Tony Alford and Reggie Dupre in the levee board have done a wonderful job with the taxpayers' dollars, Terrebonne Parish and the state. And we've built 2 lock systems. We've built 30 pumps. So we've got our flooding well under control. I mean, you shouldn't flood anymore. We have protection to Morganza at 12.5 to 15 feet. So now it's time to focus back, which we've never quit focusing, but the coast. So the Atchafalaya River long distance sediment pipeline is something I've worked on for quite a few years, and we're trying to move it forward now. And basically what it is, it's a 34-inch pipeline, and it will pump sediment from the western side of Terrebonne to the eastern side of Terrebonne, and actually all the way, we plan to go all the way to the South Lafourche levee system.
Now, let's get the graphic up that pertains to that if we could. Go one more, and then that way people can see.
And if you see on the left side of your screen, we would start there. That's right. That's right in Terrebonne Parish, not far from the Atchafalaya. And as you're building your pipeline, you would start pumping those areas with sediment. Now remember, the good thing about this, you're pumping mud, sediment. You're not putting a lot of salt or fresh water where you're going to hurt the fishing industry. You build land immediately when you start it. And it's a 34-inch line. As you can see, you would build to the left first, then the center, and then you would go underneath the Houma Navigation Canal. You would go underneath the Houma Navigation Canal at a depth of 35 to 40 feet, and you would end up all the way to Lafourche Parish. Now remember, this does 2 things. This builds 100,000 acres of open water, some marshes, but mostly open water, and it reestablishes the north bank of Terrebonne Bay, and therefore puts Terrebonne back to what it was 75 years ago. Not totally, but parts of it. And it's 100,000 acres. This isn't a small project. It's about a $400 million project, and we have a funding source that we're working on, and we hope to get started with the engineering on it.
Now, y'all describe it as a conveyance system.
That's correct. You convey mud, sediments from the Atchafalaya. You see, the Atchafalaya has, if you go to the next slide, okay, you have your borrow sites, your pipeline, and your placement areas, which I just showed you. That's where you're going to be placing it. Then the next slide is where would you get the sediment? That's the Atchafalaya to your left, and that's Horseshoe Bend and Crewboat Cut. And if you look at those 2 areas, you have 29.3 million cubic yards available now. And that's where you would pump off of is those spoil areas, because it replenishes itself. You would never run out of sediment. So if you go to the next slide, like I said, that's the Atchafalaya. If you look, you have 9.8 million at Horseshoe Bend, and you have at Crewboat Cut 19.5 million cubic yards. But the next one is the estimated annual infill, which you see 3.2 and 5.6 million. That means every year 8.8 million cubic yards gets deposited in that area that the Corps and the Port of Morgan City has to go dredge out. And because it's no beneficial use to no one here in Terrebonne Parish. Mm-hmm. So you would have a never-ending source of sediment to rebuild the marshes of Terrebonne Parish.
And that's the fastest growing delta in the nation.
And it doesn't stop unless the Mississippi River would stop. And then if you look at the next screen, that's a layout of the pipeline, which is in red right there, which, as you know, would go all the way to Cocodrie and then of course past Cocodrie. And it would be like I say, it's a 34-inch pipeline, and there would be a dredge in the Chafalaya constantly pumping 24 hours a day. And you're building acres and acres every day. You're not waiting 50 years to be built by sediments out of water. And if you go to the next one, it really shows you a good picture of the pipeline with the different the spoil areas that we plan to pump. And, you know, this is about a $400 million project. You know, we've got Morganza rolling. The Corps now building, you know, we got $440 million came in on Corps money. So the Corps coming into Morganza. So we need to go to the next phase of saving Terrebonne Parish, and this is it.
You're really trying to bring it back like to the 1930s and 1940s.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And we're using sediment off the Chafalaya, and while we're doing that, we're helping them from dredging and spending money on the Chafalaya to keep their navigation clear. They have a problem. They have too much sediment.
Right.
Like back where he told me, we could have all the sediment we want. They'll give it to us. We just got to get it away from there.
Right.
And he's the port commissioner. And so you can see the large areas. Of course, if you look at Terrebonne Parish, our most badly needed area, you can see is to our east between us and Lafourche Parish. And of course, to the east, and then Lafourche Parish to the west. So this would help Lafourche and Terrebonne. And I've got with Archie Chassaw actually today about it. We had a meeting with North Lafourche, South Lafourche, and Terrebonne levee districts, along with Archie and myself and a lot of others, that we're looking at this project.
And everybody's on board?
Everyone's on board, without a doubt.
Harmony. I like that.
It's you know, it's something that can be built, and it needs to be built. I mean, there's two phases left for us. You know, one is to rebuild our marshes. The other one is our Barrier Island, which we're going to get to. You know.
What about this profile view that's next? What is
what?
That? They got a profile view next, right here, up on the.
Yeah, that's just showing when you're going under canals or what have you. You run the pipe to whatever depth you need. That's just a takeoff. I wanted to just show it to the public.
Okay, good.
The next one is basically the same thing.
Yeah.
And then and then if you look at the next one,
Impacts.
it shows your surface area impact is 110,000 acres. That's as big as the Chacahula Basin. And it would build bureaucracy south of Fargo Canal and Lake Tambo, Wonder Lake, which is the north side of Terrebonne Bay. And then the next one is just another slide, and it's showing the cost of it. It's $246 million. Now, of course, this is about 12 years old, so costs have gone up, things have gone up, but this is basically the pipeline. And as you reach these areas, now what you see along there is booster pumps. It would, you have to boost it every so often, because you got to remember, that's when you get all the way to Lafourche, it's 50 miles. It's 50 miles of pipeline. And as you can see, you're pumping along the way, and it's 24 hours. And like I said, you're pumping, the majority is sediment with some water.
It's almost like a sewer line needing a lift station at times.
Correct. With a lot of sediments off the Chafalaya, and these booster pumps just keep it going. But you got to feed it with a dredge that would sit in horseshoe bin and crew boat cut year round. And this is very doable, and we'd be building immediately. You know, like the large diversion in Barataria is one thing. It's 75,000 CFS. But the problem is you're not going to get benefit for that for 25, 30 years. Now, it's nothing wrong with it, except, as you know, the fishermen don't like it because it's freshening up the water for the shrimp and seafood industry. This doesn't hurt the seafood industry because we're pumping the majority of it is sediment off the Atchafalaya.
Sure helps us during hurricane season.
That's correct. And it's
So if we go to the project summary, next there you go.
yeah. And then it's a 34-inch permanent pipeline. It's 85 million cubic yards of dredge material is what they believe you can do with the first phase. And you have 3 major landowners to go through, and it'll have minimum marsh impact because where we're building is mostly open water.
Right.
You see, and this is, like I said, this is not an overnight thing. And, we plan to move it forward. At least I'll move it forward with the few months I got left. And the next administration will keep it going, And this is now it's time to us go south of Morganza Levee and protect the rest of Terrebonne.
All right, let's hold that thought. We're going to take a short break. We're going to come right back with the parish president of Terrebonne Parish, Mr. Gordon Dove. And it's right next. Don't go away. Today's social media segment is brought to you by Terrebonne General Health Systems, modern technology, and timeless caring. Rouse's, you're either local or you're not. Buick, the craft of modern luxury. St. Martin and Bourke, know your rights. All right, we are back. We're with the parish president of Terrebonne Parish on Going Public, and we're talking about a very interesting program that's going to bring sediment from the Atchafalaya all the way across Terrebonne Parish and Lafourche Parish for that matter. So we left off at the Morganza to the Gulf map, and I'll turn it back over to the parish president for explanation.
Right, and so this is to protect the areas south of Morganza to the Gulf and to rebuild everything within Morganza to the Gulf will rebuild itself because you're trapping fresh water. Mm-hmm. So now we have to work south of Morganza to the Gulf. And of course, if you know,
now the slide up, please. If we
now that the Corps of Engineers, because that's the pipeline, as you can see, we're going to overlay that with the Morganza picture where Morganza comes into play. And the next slide. So this is Morganza. Now this is the Corps. If you looked at the Corps of Engineers emblem on it, they are now involved in Morganza. Of course, you know they are a slow process. They're building 2 floodgates in the Intercoastal Canal. They're building Humboldt Canal, a new floodgate, and they're gonna do Reach A in the Delorge area. And so you know they're starting to move. We have $440 million. We're looking for, at the end of the day, about $3 billion to complete what we've already done on Morganza, but that's to get Morganza to 21 feet.
Right, correct.
I mean, you know, right now our goal is to get it to 15 feet, and I think we're fine.
Yeah.
And so if you look at another one, just another one showing the floodgates and everything, and as you know, if you look to the right of Morganza, you can see how that's just deteriorated away due to. That is the area of Terrebonne and Lafourche you can't get fresh water to. It just keeps getting, more coastal erosion, saltwater intrusion. So that's where we're focusing. All of South Terrebonne. And
now you're going to try to fill in those reservoirs, or do you keep some of the reservoir?
Well, you keep the original reservoir.
Okay, all right, yeah.
You see, you would keep the original lakes and original canals and bayous, I should say, because the canal's not original. And then, so we've gone along and we're going to slurry pump millions, tens of millions of cubic yards and rebuild south of Moganza, and to protect Terrebonne Parish and put it in the state, as you said, it was, like it was in the 30s and the 40s.
Yeah.
Then we're going to go, then the next phase that we have to go to is the Barrier Islands, which you got to remember, we've always been working on the Barrier Islands.
Go to the next slide. If
we've never stopped, even though the emphasis was to talk a lot about Moganza and about the 30 pump stations that we built in Terrebonne and the lock systems. Of course, the H&C lock system is going out for bid sometimes this week. The levee board's going to come on your show and make an announcement. So that's going to be that's a $300 million lock system on the H&C. But if you look at the string of Barrier Islands in Terrebonne, and of course East Timalaya is actually in Lafourche, but it benefits it. We've been working on Trinity, Timalaya, and Raccoon was done some while back with rocks. So that's that's the two phases. One is the slurry pumping to rebuild our marshes. The next is to hit the Barrier Islands. So if you go to the next
Raccoon
one,
Island, if we can.
This is what the effect of rocks is. This is how you save your Barrier Islands. Now that's Raccoon Island 2020. So if you go to the next slide, it shows up. You see how the tides come in, deposit sand, and wash out, and come back out after they've deposited the sand. See, Raccoon Island is self-sufficient.
Little jetties, huh?
And the same thing was done in Grand Isle.
Yeah.
70 miles away, 75 miles away. And this is the key to our Barrier Islands. Now, if you go to the next one, Timalaya Island, we spent some money rebuilding that. We had about $160 million that we spent on the islands. And that's just a picture of Timalaya Island. It's not as much as we would have liked to be done. I think we pumped 4 million cubic yards, but it keeps it there until one day we could put segmented breakwater rocks on it.
But it's a lot better than when I flew over it about 30 years ago.
And look at Timalaya Island in 2021, the next one. And then the next one is Whiskey Island. Now, we've proposed rocks on this. This was in 2017. It's lost some of that sand because we proposed back then when they did it to the state to go ahead and put segmented breakwater rocks. We have all the design and all for it, but we're pushing to, we're getting so much money from the state for Moganza and pump stations and everything else, lock systems. You can only get so much money. Well, this is our next phase that we need to hustle money for. And if you go to the next one, there's another picture of Whiskey Island. It's very, it's real good island. But so we don't have to keep pumping sand on it. Segmented breakwater rocks would do the trick. And then if you look at the next one, that's another picture of Whiskey Island.
But it's healthy looking on the interior.
Right, and that's it's went through the hurricanes and all. It done fairly well. Remember, they got this sand from Ship Shoal, which is a better quality of sand. When you get it out of the bay and all behind it, it's a sugar sand. It just erodes quicker. But still, rocks is the key to keeping it going. And then the next one is Trinity Island, and as we put about 5 million cubic yards on. Now Whiskey Island we put 10.4 million cubic yards. This one we put about 5 million cubic yards on Trinity Island in 2021. You could see it here. And so, we haven't forgot the islands while we come to your show all the time.
Next slide, if you can.
And the next slide shows the bulldozers and all as you can see up at the top of this deal is where they're pumping. Right there, they're pumping 9 miles from offshore with Ship Shoal sand. And you can see them working it there. That was in 2021. So we haven't forgot your Barrier Islands. We just didn't talk about them a lot.
A lot of people said it couldn't be done, but China did it off of Taiwan, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So.
And then if you look at the next one, the next slide is also, what they do is they pump the water, the sand, and the dozers, if you can see, they pile it up and they spread it. And this was very, very productive. And, we're not we're just moving along with the barrier islands, trying to protect it till we can get the rocks on them.
In the next shot, we were there live when you were actually doing the rock jetty levee on Island Road.
We worked this over 3 years. This is Island Road. As you can see, it'll be protected forever. That's 8 foot on the south side. When a hurricane comes in, remember that 8 foot breaks the energy. Morganza's to the north of this, so it helps Morganza. It helps that wildlife, that refuge in it. And we did that in house. We actually did that in house with over the past 3 years or so.
But most importantly, you preserve grave sites on the island itself.
Yes. And of course, they went back to the I think that's.
Yeah, that was a pretty impressive project.
And then if they go to the next one, and I just brought this because we've got $32 million for Valhalla Road extension. In thanks to the delegation, Bretta Land, and Bretta Lane really focused on this, along with Tana and Jerome Zarang and Mike Feasey. And this is just showing you 2 different routes that we could take, and we're getting with the landowners as we speak. We've got $3.5 million for the engineering of it. So project has kicked off. Valhalla. This is from Valhalla all the way to Highway 90. Actually, it goes to 311. It goes under 90 to 311 and lines up with the road that goes to Rouse's, K&B, and, of course, Fletcher College. And this is well needed. And like I said, this project has officially started on the engineering phase. We do have the money in priority 5 to construct it, and we have the money to start the engineering. Do a lot of the engineering and land acquisition.
Well, that'll be a busy corridor, won't it?
So it'll go from Savannah Road to Bull Run Road, and Bull Run Road to on Highway 90 back to Highway 311. If you go to the last slide, that's Rouse's Drive. Fletcher is right to the left of it, and then you would hit that, and you would go either take a left, go to Thibodeau, or you take a right and go get on Highway 90.
Sort of resembles a lot of Lafayette.
And this is a project I actually started, and it will be, it'll just see, they're gonna have to permit it because it goes through some wetlands, and they'll have to permit it. And
got about a minute left. You wanted to mention something about insurance real quick?
Yeah. As everyone knows, one of the biggest things facing us in Louisiana is really the United States is flood insurance. So, when FEMA came out with the 2.0, along with Jeff Landry and Liz Burrell, we went ahead, with the Attorney General's office, we sued FEMA. As far as the maps, the maps were started in 2009. And they were appealed. Well, but the maps finally, you can only kick the can down the road so far. But we do have what's called a LOMAR, that if you are building, contact our office, and we'll go in there and try to get your elevation lowered through what's called a LOMAR. And I think Chris Pulaski came explain that to your station one day. But we have not, we're still fighting the flood insurance issues in Terrebonne and Louisiana.
And we'll keep watching that. Once again, going public with the parish president. I'm Martin Falls. He's Gordy Dove. We'll see you in the next Going Public. Take care, everybody.